King of Kings has been out for a couple of days now, and hence I'm assuming if you have been on YouTube you will have probably seen at least a couple of videos out already on the intended way of playing the new countries. With that said, I've come up with some more creative runs for you to do in this update, with varying degrees of difficulty. And today, I'm going to cover 5 of them. These will have a theme to them, and the idea is to focus on builds that are unique and interesting, that are not immediately obvious. I will, however, be routing these with Ironman in mind, as well as using the standard setup and maintaining achievement compatibility as best as I can. So with that said, we'll be looking at 5 builds today. 1 I'm going to be putting into the easy category, 2 are more normal difficulty, or close to what I'd call a conventional run, and 2 more advanced runs that will involve a couple tank switches and things of that nature. But it shouldn't be impossible to achieve, unlike some of my other modified stackers. With that said, let's begin. One of the first things I got updated in this update was Byzantium. New ideas, look at that. 10 goods produced, 25 CCR, fancy missions, all these nice stuff. The problem with playing Byzantium though is the Ottomans exist. That's kind of annoying. It's kind of a problem. And yeah, a lot of issues can arise with that. If only there was some way to experience the Byzantium mission tree without having to, deal with the Ottomans. Well, luckily for you, there is. So let's cover over this build today. Because what you need to do is actually begin playing yourself as the Ottomans. The strategy here is going to be rather simple. As the Ottomans, day 1 declare war on Byzantium, defeat them, pop a couple of missions, namely the City of the World's Desire, and you're gonna, when you integrate to Byzantium, I'm going to annex Byzantium here. Very clearly with the console, just to be honest. I cannot type. There we go, we're gonna annex Byzantium, and we're gonna gain access to this decision here to make Constantinople the capital. This is going to do some stuff, make it Turkish and sunny, make it the capital, but there's not much point coring. The other land we take from Byzantium. The other thing to do as well is to annex Athens, I believe that's the tag. Yes, it is, and Eritrea, Epirus. The Epi? It is Epi. Excellent. So once you've done that, you want to kill these 3 countries as early as possible. No need to kill anyone else or do anything else as the Ottomans. You want to give out your mana and get some advisors to really focus on getting monarch points. Use those to develop Constantinople as much as you possibly can. And then with that said and done, what you can go ahead and do is prepare for the ultimate easy mode Byzantium build. What you want to do is go ahead and release someone like Eretna, feed them all of this land. I'm not going to bother transferring it. I'm also going to recommend releasing Bulgaria. And again, Bulgaria you don't actually want to give any more land to, but release someone like Aydin and give them land here. You probably want around 3 subjects. What you are sending up here for is to dev Constantinople as much as possible, then move your capital to this province here. While deving Constantinople, what I would also recommend is you can have these 2 missions completed while you're just existing. When you pop City of the World's Desire, this is going to give you another 3 base production, another 3 base development in Constantinople. But more importantly, it's going to give you access to repurposing Hagia Sophia. This mission is strictly speaking optional, you can ignore it and go straight into Byzantium, but if you want a bit more of an advanced meme, well, you can go ahead as get Adventech 4, I'd recommend not getting Adventech 5 and the usuals. And then with that said and done, you can go ahead and build a temple here, and get Hagia Sophia upgraded back to level 2. It's going to go level 1 when you conquer it, so that's something you're going to have to do. That's where the debt and the Ottoman wealth comes in. Fun fact about Ottoman wealth and money, I'm going to take out an obscene amount of debt right now. Look at the amount of debt I'm taking. I'm going to take pretty much max loans here. So we can have 56 loans, taking absolutely insane amounts of money before we go anywhere near bankruptcy. There we go, yep, 7k. What we then can go ahead and do is release and play as Byzantium, and something interesting is going to happen. Oh, important actually, move your capital out of Constantinople. I fly tag back into Ottomans, and, ooh, not Ottawa, tag Turkey. And then I integrate Byzantium. What I want to do is, almost forgot to mention that is important, move your capital somewhere like here. And then, and only then, can you release and play as Byzantium. As this will also give you access to Constantinople. And a bunch of the Ottoman money taking out, because doing so will give you a bunch of the Ottoman money. And more importantly, we're not going to have debt in the process. There's going to be some good money to get us started going right away. Now, one thing you'll point out is that the capital is now Turkish and Sunni. Seems quite awful. Don't worry, as Byzantium, you have the old Restore Constantinople mission, which you gain access to from, well, basically, you don't even need the DLC for that. and when you restore Constantinople, you get to flip back to Greek and Orthodox for free. Now, one thing I would not recommend doing as the Ottomans is integrating Galatia. I'd actually recommend leaving it. The reason is that it's not that much work for you to integrate it as Byzantium. You need to get some promised trade power, but when you do integrate it as Byzantium, you gain 3 base tax and 1 base production Constantinople, compared to not doing that. If you do that as the Ottomans, you don't gain this base production and development, so that's quite good. As you can see, we still have access to our funny missions over here. We can still do all of our normal Byzantium things. But another funny thing that we can do in the process is if we have given all of this land away to the Ottomans, so, you know, we've released Aydin as well, we've given Eretna all this land, and we reduce the Ottomans down to no PM. When we declare our independence on the Ottomans, if we do that and then take their one province, which is either going to be this one or this one, wherever we decide to move our capital, doesn't really matter, something very interesting going to happen. And that interesting thing is that we're able to annex the Ottomans and gain all of their vassals, namely Bulgaria, Eretna, and whoever you release in Turkey, namely Aydin here, for free without any aggressive expansion. They're not going to be loyal, but it's basically going to let us play Byzantium while starting with the Ottoman land. A very profitable endeavor, if you ask me. This is the ultimate easy way mode of experiencing the Byzantine missions. The main drawback of this, however, is in terms of achievements, this is going to lock me out of the achievements that are Byzantium specific. Namely, Basilicus, you're going to have to do it the hard way. I'm afraid this achievement actually requires you to start as Byzantium, and since we didn't start as Byzantium, you're not going to be eligible for it. If you want that achievement, I'm afraid you're going to have to go do it legitimately. But that's going to conclude our build number 1 option, the Ottomans release into Byzantium. Even if you are not there and you can still defeat the Ottomans as Byzantium, this build is probably stronger than just starting as Byzantium overall. So with that being said and done, let's go move on to number 2. So, while Ottomans into Byzantium I've considered easy mode, this one I'm going to consider more of a conventional campaign. It certainly shouldn't be challenging, but it's not going to be something as trivial as playing as the Ottomans and releasing your country that you want to play as. We're going to have to do this as the Mamluks, and the idea behind this build is to use the new Mamluks unique unit to their full potential. Well, not quite their full potential. We'll get to their full potential in a bit. First of all, with Mamluks, the immediate thing I'd recommend is when you get this event here to administrate the Northern Territories, you just want to go for the cause here. It's going to make them a bit more disloyal, but it's something that you can fix by the time you can annex them. And by adding cause on it, you can annex them in 1 day, which is quite nice to get all annexed a lot faster. The other option just costs you prestige and legitimacy. You're better off just getting the cause. I don't know how this is even a choice. But I digress here. As Mamluks, you have access to quite an interesting mission tree. A lot of cool stuff in it, but the thing that I'm going to want to mention the most here is going to actually be the Calamari merchants. Anyway, with just getting 51 trade power in Alexandria and getting a level 3 trader, and bear in mind that you're the Mamluks, you can afford a level 2 one right off the bat, so it's not exactly much of an investment to get into level 3, you're able to get cloves in your capital. This is the best cloves promise in the entire game, as it's going to be a farmland's center of trade cloves, so it's going to be incredibly easy to develop. It's the perfect promise to get cloves on, and cloves is a trade good at the value of 8. Until coal gets invented at a trade value of 10, it is literally the best trade good, and coal then gets another event which decreases value down to 7. And when that happens, cloves yet again goes back to being the best trade good. Now, arguably coal is better because the 5 goods produced, but in terms of on the province level, cloves is actually superior as you're able to build a manufactory with +1 goods produced on it, which is not something you're able to do on coal, as the furnace gives you 5% goods produced to the country, not +1 locally. Regardless, cloves on a farmland, market, town, province is about as good as it gets in terms of base game modifiers. So this is something you should absolutely be doing as Mamluks. But that's not quite the build here, that's just standard go do the Mamluk missions. Anyone can tell you to do that. No, we're going to be doing something a bit more unique today. See, with the Mamluks we gain access to the Enlist the Mamluks estate privilege, which is going to give us 20 Mamluks full summit. And these Mamluk troops are quite nice. See, they have access to another +10 morale damage on top of them. They're reinforced quite a bit faster, and they gain drill quite a bit faster if you want to go mess around with that. You're also able to run them as infantry, which is quite interesting. Normally, unique units like that don't have an infantry version, but in this case we do have an infantry version. So I've seen people use them as their infantry version, I've seen them use them as their cavalry version. I'd recommend going cavalry, and I'd recommend embracing the cavalry meme. Why? Well, you see, as the Mamluks, we have access to the formation of Arabia. This is going to require admin tag 20. So let me go set that up real quick. It is quite a bit of conquest, but thankfully it's into a territory that really can't fight back, unlike going into the Ottomans. Which you should do, the earlier you fight the Ottomans the better, but it's, strictly speaking, not necessary. What you are going to go for, of course, here is when you form Arabia, you want to move your capital wherever, but more importantly, take the new traditions and ambitions. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to keep enlisting Mamluk as a privilege, but you're going to gain access to Arabian ideas, which are going to give you an extra 25 cavalry to infantry ratio. This is going to combine with the fact that you are already Sunni. So if you do something like taking aristocratic ideas, which you don't need to fill up any government forms for, and let me just add enough to take the first 3 idea groups here, we're going to be able to take noble connections for 10 plus 10 cavalry infantry ratio, as well as Arabian horseman tactics are going to be completed, leaving us with 95 cavalry to infantry ratio. What we can then do is go to head to tier 5. We're going to be sacrificing a unique Mamluk mission, which we can't look at anymore because we formed Arabia. You probably want to do that mission first, which will give us access to a government reform at tier 5 for plus 5 discipline on our Mamluk troops. We're going to be foregoing that plus 5 discipline to avoid culture switches and tag switches. Again, this is a normal level run. So that at tier 5, we're able to go ahead and take, and I believe the mission here is not elite mercenaries, not cavalry, there it is, cavalry warfare, for plus 10 cavalry infantry ratio. Now, the cavalry cost is also going to be quite impressive in terms of the reduction here, but it doesn't matter too much. What does matter with cavalry to infantry ratio plus 10%, we're going to be able to run a permanent 100% cavalry to infantry ratio. And with 20% of our force being Mamluks, we're going to be able to run a full stack or 2 of this unique Mamluks cavalry. It's just going to be better cavalry, it's going to be 100% of it. Horseman Arabia, Mamluks into Arabia. Usually Mamluks tend to go into Egypt. Egypt is objectively better in terms of their ideas, I'll be honest. However, it's certainly an interesting build, and I think the main difficulty comes in that I would strongly suggest, as Mamluks, fighting the Ottomans and destroying them early. The longer you let them live, AI is just going to build up, they're going to grab Byzantium, they're going to get loads of free development there, etc, etc, etc. The earlier you fight the Ottomans, the easier your life is going to be. So get ready for that. You do start stronger than at game start, even with Syria basically released as a vassal. So go into them as early as possible, and once you remove that as a potential issue to you, you're able to go ahead and have a relatively chill game of Mamluks into Arabia. So that is going to summarize it for run number 2. Now, the next build is going to be involving, well, Persia. Persia is incredibly powerful. In the update, they get an extensive mission tree, and probably the strongest mission tree out of everyone given so far. They have new revamped ideas, which are even stronger, and a lot of stuff going for them that's incredibly powerful. Now, one of the ways that people enjoy Persia is, of course, through the use of Ardabil. And Ardabil has things to make up for that. See, with Ardabil, you gain access to some cool new mechanics and stuff like that. You gain access to a whole mini new mission tree for the Rise of the Safavids. Get some fortification costs, some morale damage to make your life easier. You get monarch points out of conquering your land. Basically, you go and set up quite nicely to go ahead and form Persia. You know, gain fancy CBs, you gain conqueror traits on the rulers. So far, looking so good. And of course, when you do it, you can go ahead and form Persia and be a nice, happy chap in the process. There is, however, a more interesting way of doing it, and this is more of for the way of the achievement run. Now, this may be controversial, put in the same difficulty category as the Mamluks, but the idea is to play off your bigger power around you. But you want to go ahead and start as Hisn Kaifa. With Hisn Kaifa, you'll be able to gain access to a pretty fancy achievement, which is nice. It's always good to get fancy achievements. And while Hisn Kaifa does not gain access to any extensive missions, they actually have the old Middle Eastern missions for Prepare for War, Reconquer Aleppo, that kind of stuff, getting the Silk Road. You still can go ahead and form Persia without any tag switches. However, this is a good way of earning the achievement in the process. And another thing that I'd also recommend if you're doing this as Hisn Kaifa is to go ahead and flip Zoroastrian to really get a lot of, well, immersion as it were in the process. Not that Hisn Kaifa was anyway Zoroastrian, apart from having the basically the same icon. I mean, it's not really a flag, but hey, it's there for your LARP to go Hisn Kaifa into Zoroastrian Persian Empire Restoration. But more importantly, you get access to the new Zoroastrian mechanics, which are quite powerful, as well as this monument not being nerfed for plus 10 discipline. Who doesn't like their own pocket Prussia? But more importantly, with your Hisn Kaifa into Zoroastrian fun build, you'll be able to still go ahead and form Persia. With that, you'll gain access to a bunch of new mechanics from the Persian mission tree, and you will be able to explore the new Zoroastrian mechanics. Now, in terms of difficulty, you're really going to have to play off the people around you. You are surrounded by much stronger tags, namely the QQ and AQ. It's going to be quite hard to do much of them. They both tend to require your land. But, again, it's not the end of the world. It's a bit of a difficult start, and that's an understatement. You also can't exactly rely on grabbing any new friends. But there is one thing that you can get going for you. Debt. Just take a bunch of loans, go over Force Limit, and you should be able to beat up QQ early, so on. And with that, once you beat up QQ early, once you're in a position where you can start expanding, once you've got a couple of provinces, you should be easy going. See, with QQ, you have a very nice Iraq you can release if you grab Mosul or Sinjar for a lot of reconquest in the area. And in terms of QQ, AQ proper, well, it's just good land to go into. Syria tends to find, well, I find they tend to get integrated pretty quickly back by the Mamluks. But if you go ahead into AQ and grab this province, you'll be able to re-release Syria again. And this is going to give you quite a bit of reconquest in this area. Well, on the Syria proper. As you can see, a lot of cause there for Syria to go ahead and grab. So it's nice land to expand into that way. And again, Persia's an excellent territory to expand into. You don't need to worry about fighting the Ottomans too early, unlike the Mamluks. They're not too much of an essential threat. They will come knocking, but at the end of the day, you also can't fight them too easily early on as well. But that's going to be it for number 3 of our runs. And after this, we're going to get into some more exotic, couple more thornballs, a couple more funny shenanigans. So before we get into our candidates for number 4 and number 5, it's time for a bit of self-shilling. If you enjoyed the video so far, a like and a sub would be appreciated. We don't have counters today, so I can't increase the counter jokes. But with self-shilling out of the way done, let's get into number 4. So this run is going to be quite a bit more challenging than the other ones, and this is going to be saying something, considering that the last one involves starting as Hits and Kaifa. We're going to have to start as Najd, and the idea here is to become a really surreal jack-of-all-trades, master of none kind of build. What do I mean by that? Well, you see, as Najd, we're going to get access to, well, the new Arabian missions, the Arabian Miners missions. And there's some stuff in that. What do I mean by it? Well, in the Najd missions, the thing we're going to go for is the Harsh Desert. This is going to give us access to Oasis development, giving us minus 15 local development cost in desert and coastal provinces, which is quite cool. But this is just a privilege we can give out to our merchant guilds. This is something that we should do, and then don't revoke it. Because after you form Najd, you need to go ahead and, well, form Georgia. To demonstrate that you can do that, let me put on debug mode, integrate Georgia. And with Georgia stated, and all that fun things done, let me also grab enough bit to do this. We can go ahead and become Georgian primary culture. And unite Georgia. We are going to need to actually unite Georgia. Georgia doesn't start united, unfortunately. See, once we unite Georgia, we can get new traditions and ambitions. Doesn't matter, we'll be flipping to another idea later. But with Georgia, we get access to the new Georgian missions. These are quite cool, but there's a couple of things we're going to be going for here in the Georgian missions, namely a couple end-of-the-game buffs. We get restoration of Union CB on Muscovy, which is quite interesting. One thing that I think is important to point out here is that I believe we get this restoration of Union Casus Belli on Muscovy, even if we're Sunni, because we're currently Sunni, and the missions don't account for us for being Sunni, so we can just get restoration of Union Casus Belli on Muscovy as a Muslim country, which I think is quite cool. You're not meant to be able to do that, but we can. I haven't tested it. I don't know if I'll bother, to be honest, but from the looks of it, there's not an alternative condition here, so hey, Paradox, you normally take care of this stuff. Make sure you do it again. But memes aside, with Georgia, we get access to a couple cool missions. Namely, when we fortify the Caucasus, now this is going to require us to get mountain provinces with a fort. We can get Great Project upgrade cost, but more importantly, we're going to unlock the Mountain Fortifications Noble Privilege, which is going to give us minus 35 local development cost to all mountain provinces with a fort. This is something we can give to the nobility, which means we're going to go build forts on our mountains and enjoy minus 35 local development cost on them. This is going to be quite nice since we're going to keep the Oasis development as well. So it's starting to look quite good. The desert mountain forts are going to be very nice for us to develop now with minus 50 development cost. I mean, it's still going to be like plus 70 on it, but you know what? We're getting places. The other thing to pick up from Georgia, which is quite interesting, is going to be the legacy of the builder. This is going to give us access to possible number of buildings +1 until the end of the game, which is quite strong. Unfortunately, this is only going to be on 3 areas, but still, +1 possible number of buildings, there's +1 possible number of buildings. If only we can get more possible number of buildings. Why are we stacking it? Just memes. Because what we're going to do next is go ahead and form Scandinavia, and we're going to take the Scandinavian ideas. Now, with Scandinavia, we're going to get a couple cool things. See those +1 free buildings you got on this area? Well, that area can be incredibly well developed, because in Scandinavia, we're going to gain access to global possible number of buildings +1, meaning that those provinces are going to get +2 building slots available to them, which is kind of funny. We'll also pick up admin efficiency, because of course we do, Scandinavian points, and some even cavalry fire to really add insult to injury. But don't worry, we're going to go a bit further than that. in our missions, we're going to be able to pick up forest expansion, which is going to be quite interesting. Forest expansion is going to give us local development costs on Arctic provinces, making us the ultimate jack of all trades. If there ever exists a Arctic desert mountain with a fort, we're going to be really good at developing it. We're going to build, you know, the new Constantinople in the Arctic desert. The Arctic desert really is a bit of a contradiction, isn't it? But it's going to need to be a mountain as well, and it's going to need a fort. And so we're just going to be really good at developing that. It's kind of a weird utility build. We become better at developing really inhospitable territories. You know, if it's a desert, we're good. If it's a mountain, we're good. If it's a, you know, if it's an Arctic province, we're great. But beyond that, As we're mainly abusing the Scandinavian ideas for the +1 building slot, as well as the earlier missions in Emirati for +1 building slot in this area, which I think is quite cool. With that all said and done, however, that's going to conclude it for our mini weird modifier stacking interesting run with a new DLC, and we're going to move on to the final run for this video, the ultimate cavalry build. So our story today is going to begin in Karakayunlu, as we want access to the Karakayunlu mission. And oh boy, is that a mission tree that we want to have access to. It's quite extensive. We get some really cool missions, get a whole bunch of permanent claims, you get to overpower Mamluks to get the buffs. You know, just a lot of very nice things to go for us. But the one thing that we definitely want to go ahead and grab, and this is going to be quite important that you do, is the mission here, the Eu4 homeland. Karakayunlu is going to get Sons of Conquest until the end of the game, giving us cavalry to infantry ratio 25% and 0.25 cavalry shock. Now bear this in mind, this is going to be an end of the game buff, and it's going to make our cavalry to infantry ratio significantly better. Namely, they'll be able to go from 50% down up to 75. So far so good, right? Well, it's going to get better. We can get 50 local goods produced on Tabriz, which is quite nice, considering that Tabriz is a, I believe, a silk province. Don't quote me. It's a silk province indeed. Excellent. Already started 7 development, so that's definitely quite strong. We're also going to be able to manipulate the price of cloth and silk and go build some mosques, which is quite nice, as well as getting local dev costs on Tabriz for a bit to help build it up. But again, it's just a very nice mission tree. There's also, you know, 75% cost advisors and other nice things they can pick up. An important thing I'd also like to point out is 20% trade steering until the end of the game, which is quite nice. Now, one thing that I would tell you to be a bit careful about actually is reorganizing the state, as this is going to give us access to a modernized Turkoman Federation Tier 1 gun reform, which is not actually something we want. See, what's quite nice about QQ is we start as a tribe. But this is a weird tribe, but this is a tribe with feudalism, which is quite unusual. Now, this does mean that when we go towards our ideas, we can go ahead and open aristocratic ideas, and this is something that we should do. I'm going to give myself Tech 10 here at the moment, and I'm going to be opening aristocratic. That's nice. Then I would actually, and this is going to be a bit weird, recommend espionage, and we'll demonstrate why in a second. Let me just fill out these ideas for now. See, aristocratic is going to give us cavalry combat ability 15%, which is quite nice, but more importantly give us access to a bit more cavalry to infantry ratio, which is already a good thing. With espionage, the reason we take it is actually for the policy. It's going to give us some more cavalry combat ability and make our emirs loyal, which is nice, I guess. However, it's going to get better. C, because we're a tribe, we get access to a couple interesting reforms. I'd recommend taking the manpower over some national tax and yearly corruption, because that's quite sad. For a religious society, you have options here. I mean, land maintenance is always nice, but we're going to be able to get pretty much free cavalry anyway, so weirdly enough, religious society isn't a bad pick here. At tier 4, you can go for land leader shock +2, that's quite strong, but we're going to get a different military reform later, which is going to make us even stronger. Really doesn't matter where you go for here. I'd actually recommend picking up cavalry warfare just to get even more cavalry to infantry ratio. Again, bear in mind that you'll be popping the mission here for the Eu4 homeland for cavalry shock and cavalry infantry ratio to the end of the game. But of course, at tier 6, we're going to go become a horde. Now, this is going to make Tribal Federation go away. That's all nice and well. But it's going to give us access to horde ideas. And this is where the fun really begins. Let me fill those out for you real quick. There we go. So once we fill out horde ideas, something very interesting is going to happen. We're going to run 70% cavalry combat ability. And we're going to get access to another 10 cavalry combat ability from policies, which means that we're already looking at 80 cavalry combat ability. But we're going to be able to push this a lot further. See, this is just QQ, but Mamluks is still a formable. Now, which means that we can go ahead and well form them. Now, before we reform the Mamluks, unfortunately, we're going to have to reform it back into a monarchy again. This is going to keep access to our horde ideas since we've already taken them. We don't need to have them filled out. But it's going to give us access to, at a tier 1 reform, ICTA. Now, we weirdly enough need ICTA to get access to the decision to adopt the Mamluk government. And we want to do that. Doesn't really matter what you want to do here, your ideas are optional, but something interesting is going to happen with that. See, with the Mamluks, we're going to get access to the Mamluk governments, and more importantly, the Mamluk missions. Which means we can go ahead to the Mamluks themselves, and I believe there's a privilege here that we can give out to them. There it is, and list the Mamluks. Now this is going to give us Mamluk force of 20%, and we're going to want to go ahead and build these Mamluk cavalry, well, out of the blue right away. Now bear in mind again, so in terms of our cavalry to infantry ratio, we're already going to be looking at 95. I've got the Turkmen Army Traditions mission pop for 25 temporary cavalry to infantry ratio. We're going to get cavalry shock instead, that's going to be more permanent. So we're going to be looking at 95 cavalry to infantry ratio. Does that mean you want to go ahead and get the tier 5 reform for more cavalry to infantry ratio here? I believe it's the tier 5 cavalry warfare. Well, not quite. See, we can go ahead and become Sunni to get another 10 cavalry to infantry ratio, and that's going to put us at enough cavalry to infantry ratio. We're going to give up the Shia buffs, but at the end of the day, I think that's worth it. Because the other thing that we're going to go ahead at tier 5 is pick up this, refine the, I'm not pronouncing that, government reform, which is going to be quite nice. See, it's going to give us 5 discipline on our Mamluk special units. It's also going to give us access to more of them as Force Summit, giving us access to 25% of our Force Summit as Mamluks, which is quite strong. And it's also going to mean that recruiting generals makes an ability happy, but more importantly, each advisor is going to give us 0.02 Yeti infamous per level. That means that if we run 3 level 5 advisors, we're going to be already looking at 0.3 Yeti infamous, and that's going to add up quite quickly. Regardless, go ahead and grab that, and now our Mamluk cavalry is going to have 5 discipline, an extra 10 morale damage, and 4 force limit. Now, what's also quite nice for this is that we are running 70 cav combat ability again. Now, the Mamluks have less cavalry combat ability than in their ideas than QQ, but as you may have guessed, the Mamluks isn't an end tag, so that's not what we're going to be finishing off. If you want pure cavalry combat ability to really just run around and devour everyone, you want to go ahead and form Arabia. Arabia is almost overkill at this point, since Arabia is going to give us access to 25 cav to infantry ratio as well as another 25 cavalry combat ability. We don't even need that ratio at this point, so it's going to be able to change our religion into something else if you really want to go that way. But what I'd actually recommend is our good friend Scandinavia. See, with Scandinavia as our end tag, we're going to get access to the Scandinavian ideas, which mentioned again here is going to give us access to even more cavalry cost reductions, which is even weird overkill, but more importantly, 0.5 cavalry fire. Now, another thing that's important to mention here, we're going to keep the enlisted Mamluk privilege, and we're going to be able to maintain the tier 5 reform as well to modernize these guys for more Mamluk's force summit and 5 discipline on them, which is quite cool. What's also interesting is we can also maintain the Mamluk government if we really want to go that way. Now, we're also going to pick up 0.5 cavalry fire here, which means all of our cavalry is going to have 0.25 shock, 0.5 fire, as well as a rather impressive 60 combat ability. It's not as great as if you went for Arabia to get another 25, so you could have 85 cavalry combat ability, but bear in mind this is 60% cavalry with a 100% ratio that you can either have as Mamluk cavalry at 25% of your force limit, so an extra 5 discipline and 10 morale damage on them, or you can have it on your normal cavalry, and this cavalry is going to be cheap, incredibly cheap. Our cavalry cost reduction, with not much else done at this point, is Morian minus 93%. But there we go, the choice is between 0.5 cavalry fire if you want to go Scandinavia, or if you just want to go Arabia for 25 cavalry combat ability. The only other thing I'll bear in mind, of course, is Scandinavia has access to plus 5 discipline in their ideas. The Arabians do not, so that's something to have in your head. Now, for reference, Arabian ideas, which I've just formed right now, just so you can see them, are going to give you access to a bit of siege ability instead, so you siege faster with your horses, because that makes sense. Here's extra cavalry to infantry ratio, but more importantly the cavalry combat ability. Again, at this point the cavalry to infantry ratio is overkill, but it does give you the relative liberty that you don't need to be Sunni. If you do decide to go that way, you can be a baddie, or any religion really that you care about. You get a bit of tax, 20 national taxes, and something to be scoffed at, but it also isn't great. You get tracering, that is good, especially if you altered the QQ missions for 20 tracering earlier, that's going to be 40 tracering. You pick up missionary strength, you get warsaw against other religions, which is always nice. You get a couple missionaries, you get yellow army tradition decay. Nothing too great to write home about. You do miss out on 5 discipline compared to Scandinavian 0.5 cavalry fire, so it's a bit of a toss-up. But regardless, I think these are your 2 main options, as it were. And finally, and it's going to be a bit weird, but you can also just stick with QQ ideas the whole time. You're going to get 20 cavalry combat ability, so 5% less than Arabia, but you're going to be able to pick up land leader shock, land leader fire out of it in the process. You can get more manpower, you get some CCR and promise force cost, less than Arabia, but still nice. You get Tolerance of Heretics, which is but you get even more land leader maneuvers, so that's a lot of general pips. Liberty Design subjects is kind of meh, as is Unrest, and a bit less tax. But again, you're getting 3 general pips at the cost of 5% cavalry combat ability reduction. I believe that's worse than the Arabian 25 from a purely squeeze out more out of your cavalry, and again, you're getting more promised war score cost against enemies and other things like that. And of course, it's very hard to compare that to Scandinavian Didier's that absolutely demolish this with admin efficiency, possible numbers of buildings, and other fun things like that. But keeping with QQ ideas are still an option, and it does technically make your run easier as there's less things for you to perform. However, these 5 runs are going to be it. This is what I was here to talk about, and these are the 5 runs I demonstrated. Hopefully you learned something new today, and I hope I inspired a campaign regardless of what form it takes. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.